Hello fellow game chefs, this is Axemmela and welcome to another countdown. I haven't made one of these videos since the second one on my channel, so therefore I need to make one. This one has been long delayed, and I hope that it satisfies. Anyways, this is the top 11 Persona 5 bosses, which basically means all of them, except for mini bosses and super bosses. There also has to be one of the three boss themes playing, which is Blooming Villain, Rivers in the Desert, or the final boss theme. And super bosses aren't counted because this is story bosses, and I haven't fought any of those two. Anyways though, before I start this, there needs to be a spoiler warning. If you haven't finished the first run of the game yet, and you don't want to be spoiled, do not watch past this point. I will now give you 5 seconds to exit. Anyways now, let's begin with number 11.
Alright guys, we better not lose now.
At the number 11 spot, we have the Holy Grail, or the Golden Toilet Bowl, whatever you want to call it. This thing is the easiest boss in the entire game, since you do not have to beat it to progress. It is probably possible to beat it, but why bother doing it? Anyways, it has two abilities. The first being Arrow of Light, which is its only dangerous move, and does about 170-ish damage on normal, from my personal experience, but you can heal the damage without effort at this point in the game. Its second ability is Will of the People, which restores it to full health. It uses this every single time it has taken 1000 damage or more, and I tested this when I fought the boss, so this is actually proper information here. But anyways, you basically just stand there and do normal physical attacks, healing occasionally, and you win. GG, next cutscene. I don't know the difficulty of the fight on Merciless difficulty. It may be hard. I don't know because I don't have the free DLC. This fight is pathetically easy, lacks any form of group attack, ends after you hit it and it heals like 7,000 times. It feels like a placeholder boss in an attempt to make the game longer at the same time. Thank God that the next entry is better by just a little bit. Oh no! A man in a floating space chair! We're all gonna die! Sorry if I just caused a massive eargasm there. Anyways, number 10 is Shadow Okumura. This fight has 3 major flaws that make me not like it. The first one is that it is very underwhelming. Instead of changing into a monster kind of thing, it is a man in a floating space chair. I mean, hopefully it reclines, but that doesn't mean anything. The second thing is that he summons minions to fight for him, more on that later. And the final flaw is that this fight is on a time limit of 30 minutes, which is basically arbitrary. It doesn't need to be there. I beat the fight in like 15 minutes, and that means I had another 15 minutes to spare, and you basically can't lose to the time limit unless you actively suck at the game. He summons multiple waves of minions to fight for him, and you should know most of their weaknesses by now because you've fought almost every single minion except for one. More on that later again. He will summon 4 enemies in these waves that you have beaten before for key cards, and can do unique things to them, like making them self-destruct and summoning in more as you kill them. The lazy fight doesn't begin until he summons his last employee, the Executive Director, which is the only challenging thing about the fight at all. The Executive himself isn't that special. He hits pretty hard, and he's a massive hitting sponge. His first attack is Executive Punch, which seems to always do half of your maximum health. Its second attack is a super attack known as Big Bang Challenge, which is the stupidest super attack I have ever seen in my entire life, and also damaging, so it's like your only threat in the fight. Okumura himself also loves to dispel your buffs, and he can also debuff you with stat decreases, and he can give you the Hunger status effect, which lowers the amount of damage you do by a ton. But he's not really much of a problem unless he casts Hunger on the entire party, in which case you'll have to dispel it all, and at this point in the game, only items can usually do that, except for 2 party members that automatically do that with one of their abilities. Healing after every single attack is the only strategy you need to beat up Space Chairman. The next entry on our list suffers from so much more from a very different thing. In fact, it's the exact opposite almost. I'm thankful there aren't any bosses before or after like Shadow Okumura. On to number 9. Number 9. The Archangel Michael. This fight sucks. I could leave it at that, but that would be very internet of me. Basically, you're fighting the final Archangel in the palace, and the other ones aren't counted because they have Keeper of Lust playing, and that's the mini-boss theme, so they're not eligible. And this palace is essentially a collection of overpowered enemies. I will be making a palace top 10 soon, but that's coming at a later date. Anyways, though, the only thing annoying about the boss is the minions he summons. They can buff his attack, defense, evasion, and accuracy. That isn't the problem either, though. They both have the ability Recarmdra, which should be a revival spell, but all bosses and mini-bosses who are given it can heal the target to full health with it. Even though the minion does end up taking so much damage that their HP is reduced to 1 when they use it, it's not really much of a power balance, because the boss can just summon more of the angels to heal him again. Anyways, the boss does have a few attacks of his own. They are a buff, which makes his next physical attack do double damage, a nuclear ability called Cosmic Flare, a heavy hitting ability known as Sword Dance, a blessed move known as Divine Judgment, which always seems to do half of your current health, Maziodyne, Maragidyne, Mabufudyne, and Magarudyne, Magidolone, and that's basically it. So, everything that hurts in a nice little package. I didn't like this fight very much, mainly because of the heals to the boss and me being slightly underleveled, because you need to remember, this is a personal opinion list. Not your opinion, mine. Anyways, though, time for number 8. I wish this guy was lower, but Shadow Okumura can go jump into an erupting geyser. Muhtaram is literally the second boss of Persona 5, and he is the hardest in the entire game. Excluding the final boss, obviously. I have more trouble in him than the final boss in my opinion, but other people say the final boss is harder, which makes no sense. I beat that thing first try. But the only way I beat him was by actually turning the difficulty from normal to easy, and gamers rage over that. So yeah. Basically, I have great respect though for whoever did defeat him on Merciless because you have great skills. And you probably have Satanayo, you piece of garbage. Anyways though, now that I've told you about the difficulty, I have to explain why he is hard. In order to damage him, you have to attack one of 5 paintings, each which uses a different attack. The nose charges up a powerful wind spell, which means Ryuji will have his weakness exploited. The left eye can debuff you, the right eye uses elemental attacks, and the mouth bites you for lots of physical damage. And they don't share a health bar. Fun. Also, want to know what the even better news? That's the first of 3 phases and 2 intermissions. When you have dealt enough damage to this nightmare over here, the man himself will come out and you can attack him. He does have a multi-target attack, but it is like 10 damage. It's like trivial. After 2 turns for each party member, he will resurface into the paintings. They still don't share a health bar, but now they all have to be killed at the exact same time. And on top of that, they have a new ability, which coats you in black paint. Black paint? What am I talking about? Which makes you weak to all types of damage in the game, which means physical, guns, fire, ice, lightning, wind, nuclear, psychic, bless, curse, and potentially almighty attacks, but he doesn't use those, so I wouldn't know. So I have that phase, and you get the same intermission as before. The third phase is the same, but slightly easier, I guess. The thing is, in some boss fights, you have to send a character to go do something to mess with the boss. While they are away, you have 1 less turn and 1 less party member, meaning you should not send your healer and send in good old useless Ryuji instead. Since he doesn't ever get healing abilities, and he only gets his multi-target buff later in the game, so it doesn't matter. Sending the character and keeping the boss distracted by attacking relentlessly will enable the chosen party member to coat Muhtaram in the paint that he uses on you, which makes him weak to everything. It is possible to kill Muhtaram before Phase 3, but I didn't have Rampage by this time, so I had great difficulty trying to kill it. Hopefully the next fight is better to you guys.
Is it a shadow? No! Then...
It's not Futaba.
Don't tell me. This is insane!
If it's not a shadow, then what is it?
It's a cognition! A monster that Futaba's cognition created! How can that be?
Hey, look out! Here it comes!
Number 7, Shadow Wakaba. At this point in the countdown, this is the halfway point between bosses I like and I don't like. This is one I actually had difficulty deciding on because it was so mundane, and in between that it had good things and bad things, and that made it hard. Futaba's palace wasn't my favorite palace. In fact, it is my most hated palace. It was mostly kind of meh, and the boss kind of fits into that category. Fighting a flying Spinks should be awesome, but this fight's first phase forces you to waste time and resources. Since the enemy is too far away to use physical attacks, which means you have to use your guns with very limited ammo, depending on which characters you have in your party, and your spells that cost SP to use, which again, that's a precious resource that you can use for healing and stuff. It does have a few interesting attacks of its own, since it does not have a normal physical attack. It has a crushing attack with one of its paws that does about a quarter of your health when you are hit by it. And she also has a group version of this called Spinks Swipe, which, accompanied by the fact that she attacks twice per turn, means she can do whatever she wants in those 2 turns and potentially knock out half of your party's health. She also has a wind ability called Wing Blast, which does damage to the entire party, and also has a good chance of inflicting dizziness, which lowers your chance of hitting the enemy with physical attacks, which is kinda useless at this point. I don't know why that's even there. The first phase goes on until she casts Rapid Ascent, which is really her charging for a Sphinx Dive attack, which wants to eat your face for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you survive this, the second phase begins after Futaba's awakening, and Wakaba got very, very angry. Futaba creates a ballista, and you have to send one of your party members to activate it. Sending the same party member over and over again makes them tired, and therefore makes it take longer for them to activate. So you must strategize, and for me it took 4 times to use the ballista to actually kill it, so I had to use one of the people to make it take longer. When you aim and fire the ballista, Wakaba will be rendered inactive for 3 turns, able to take physical damage, and be able to take an increased amount of damage. She also gets Dreadful Scream after you do this, or at half health, I don't know this for sure, which has a chance to inflict you with Despair, which makes your character not do anything, soaks up SP, and after 3 turns makes them suicide. All in all, fairly difficult on normal mode. Anyways though, on to number 6. Number 6, Shadow Kennish. This boss is easily the funniest boss in the entire game, because of what you're fighting. Oh god, even having memories of it is like, makes me want to crack up. Because Kennish turns himself into a fly, and, well yeah, he just turns himself into a fly, that's really about it. Turns himself into a man-fly. There's a fly swatter element, you could probably skip the fight. Anyways though, onto the fight itself. The first phase is actually a fake-out, because it has the mini-boss theme playing and you're fighting a man-fly. He isn't too special though, like, he can inflict fear and use curse attacks to damage you, which hardly do any damage. His physical attack is like 30 HP, and at this point in the game, that is basically meaningless. However, the fight has only just begun, as he summons a giant pig super robot named Pikitron that wants to kill you with the power of $5 bills and lots of bacon. The pig itself has deadly abilities, and I feel sorry for those on Merciless, because I'm pretty sure that they turn into blocks of Swiss cheese dyed red. His first ability is Ocular Vulcan, which basically means firing dual machine guns into your face and dealing about half your health on average. His second ability is Metabolic Wave, which is a group-wide attack that does the damage of Ocular Vulcan. His third attack is Missile Party, which is a group-wide fire attack that hurts as long as you don't have An in your party who is resistant to fire at this point. Kennish also has a big super attack called Super VIP form, which is him charging for March of the Piggies, which hits really, really hard. Eventually, after a couple turns of him using March of the Piggies, you have to throw an expensive item to keep him distracted, but the item will permanently disappear forever. It'll keep him occupied and he won't attack for a couple turns. Ryuji seems to know best during this because he always has like the most expensive items as suggestions. So you better have him during this phase. All in all, pretty fun fight and pretty hilarious. The number 5 spot actually only barely edged it out, so this one was actually a close match. But number 5 did just enough to make it. Anyways, on to number 5. Number 5, Shadow Kamoshida. When I first played Persona 5, I had very high standards, considering the hype and the length of the development cycle. The game had great music so far, fair enemies on the normal difficulty. The mini-bosses were pretty fun and taught you the game's mechanics, and the music, again, is really, really great. So good I had to mention it twice. However, I hadn't seen a boss yet, and when Shadow Kamoshida came, my standards were met, as number 5 on this list is essentially you meeting my standards. Shadow Kamoshida starts off very simple. He only has one move, which is Volleyball Assault, where he shoots lots of volleyballs for damage within 20 to about half your max HP. So you should have Morgan on in your party to heal as fast as possible, while keeping a steady stream of attacks with Ryuji and Joker. After a little while, he heals to full health, and you have to smash his trophy that heals him when he takes too much damage. By hitting it, you unlock Kamoshida's moveset a little bit more. His next new ability is Tongue Whip, which is a group-wide physical attack, I believe. His second attack is Lustful Slurp, which gives him an attack buff for 3 turns. His third new attack starts with him staring at On, which means guard, as he's about to cast Lick, which will probably one-shot On at full health on normal or higher. After smashing his trophy, you will be asked to send a member to steal his crown on top of his head, and send Ryuji for the love of God, because if you do not, well, you get screwed. And then he gets even more abilities! His next new ability is Golden Knife, which can one-shot Morgana and On at full HP, especially if it crits. He also has a super move known as Gold Metal Spike, which will kill you easily if you don't guard when the game tells you to. Once you steal the treasure, he will be filled with crippling depression and take lots of damage, which makes the fight easily winnable unless you are purposely trying to lose. Anyways, on to number 4.
Let me make myself clear. Do not think of me as you did my foolish son who acted so brashly.
You little...
Die! Without further delay!
Our leader's gone through shit because of you! It's on!
Stand in my way.
Number 4, Shadow Shido. This guy is basically famous because he is responsible for a lot of people dying, especially on normal and higher. This guy is the very first enemy to have rivers in the desert playing. He will first mount a lion, which in Shido's mind represents the masses, because he is running for Prime Minister. The lion is strong against physical and gun attacks. He will then transform into a winged lion at 2/3 of his max HP, meaning he is now the opposite and is strong against magical attacks. At 1/3 HP, his lion transforms into a pyramid, which has no immunities or weaknesses. It also has a big uber attack as well, which you can heal away if you manage to guard. And on Morgana in your party, because Morgana dies to everything at this point in the game. The second phase begins where he shows off his sweet muscles and begins to attack you with many different new attacks. In fact, all of his abilities basically get replaced. He has an ability replacing a physical attack called Tyrant's Punch, which does a great deal of damage without Makoto's defense buff and has the chance to inflict fear, although at a very low chance. He can also cast Dekaja, which dispels all buffs from the enemy, aka us, except for Charge and Concentrate. His third ability is Megidola, which does very heavy almighty damage to everyone. His fourth ability is Evil Touch, which inflicts fear to one enemy. After getting down to a quarter of his HP, he gets even more powerful abilities. And he restores to full health. What freaking fun. His first new one is Deathbound, which does physical damage to the entire party 1 to 2 times. His second and final new ability that came with this phase is Heat Riser, which increases attack, defense, accuracy, and evasion. Just kidding. He gains access to every offensive and defensive thing in the entire game. Ha. Anyways, on to number 3. Number 3, Shadow Sigh. This fight is up here for its creativity, since playing actual roulette during a boss fight sounds like fun. Also, in case you guys are wondering, this is the last shadow boss on the list, meaning that there's the final boss and one other boss left. Shadow Sigh wasn't the best in the game, but is still incredibly creative. You started off the fight by being able to attack on your very first turns, but then she casts Roulette Time, which is a 2-round cast that you cannot attack during unless you want to face the penalty. You get knocked down to 1 HP if you end up provoking the penalty. Anyways though, you'll be forced to bet HP, SP, money, or items. If you lose, you have to give up the chosen thing in varying amounts. If you win, you can steal size things in that order. However, winning is impossible to start because you put a glass lid over your chosen bet. You can shoot the lid by sending someone away and catch her in the act. She then gets very, very angry and transforms into a monster, and the battle will proceed as normal. At this point, she will start spamming powerful physical and gun attacks, such as Gatling Gun, Severing Slash, and 100 Slaps. She can also cast Dekaja, Megidola, Tarukaja, Heat Riser, and even Roulette Time at some points. And it's actually fair at that point. Then when she gets low on health, she will cast Desperation, which rapidly increases the user's attack power, but lowers their defensive significantly. She used an attack called Berserker Dance, and I never got to this point, but from the footage you see on screen, which is from Boss Fight Database, Final Guard was put up, which means that more than one person in your party would get instantly killed by that attack, so it's probably super duper powerful. Anyways though, on to number 2, the penultimate entry.
We'll take it all back. Our future and this world.
No tolerance, no mercy. Rebels who dare defy my rule. You shall.
Number 2, God of Control, Yalda. Final bosses are often special cases on these kinds of lists, but I'm counting all story bosses, and final bosses fall into this category. So we have Yaldabaoth in this spot. I'm not counting the Holy Grail phase before, because it's basically just the same fight as the original Holy Grail fight, but with a new coat of paint and some new abilities. Yaldabaoth being the final boss means he has no pushover. I did beat him first try in normal, but I lucked out because I had a persona that made me withstand fatal attacks, and also bring me back up with full health once per fight if I happen to die. Final Guard's recommendation for this fight, and having at least a confidant rank of 1 with Hifumi, so you can swap out party members. He starts off with 2 abilities, Dekaja and Arrow of Light, which does pretty mediocre damage. However, after dealing enough damage to him, he will start casting debuffs you cannot get rid of. And he also gains new arms, which gives him extra turns. The first one he reveals is a gun, which can cast Distorted Lust, which makes it so a character has a chance to skip their turn. And it only lasts about 1 turn before it disappears. The gun can also shoot you and deal pretty decent damage very, very fast. The second arm he summons has a bell, which not only uses stat debuffs, but also casts Distorted Vanity, which makes you weak to everything just as Muhtaram did. The reason I don't explain a lot of the boss's other attacks is because he can cast any stat debuff, and can cast any elemental attack in the game, and most of his attacks are almighty, meaning you cannot reflect them. Just thought I'd mention that. After that, he summons a sword, which can cast Distorted Gluttony, which doubles all skill costs for 1 turn. Meaning, the only things you can do are items, normal attacks, and guarding if you don't want to have your SP and HP put through a pasta maker and then a paper shredder. It also uses lots of melee attacks that crit way too often for my liking. The 4th and final arm is a book, which casts Distorted Wrath, which makes your party members not always listen to your commands, to put it lightly. Then the gun will then gain Distorted Avarice, I believe, which inflicts hunger while dealing a lot of damage. The bell will get Distorted Envy, which casts a new debuff called Jealousy, which just happens to make you fight each other. Then Distorted Pride is the last deadly sin, I think is what it's called, that it gets. The book will now be ready to counterattack if you touch any part of its body by taking 40 SP away, which is a good amount of SP. That's like 3 healing spells. Then it prepares its ultimate attack, Rays of Control, which does 200 to 400 damage when you guard it. Also, the arms regenerate at this point, so there's no point in killing them unless you want them to stop attacking you for a few turns. Then the cutscene plays where the Phantom Thieves are believed in again, we're gonna sacrifice, and Satan saves Christmas. Yep, just your average, everyday, badass Persona final boss. Also, the music is very top-notch. Anyone that has played the game will know who the next boss is, so let's just get straight to it. The final entry has come. If you are still with us and you still care about spoilers, and you have not completed Shido's Palace, do not proceed, because I'm about to give a massive warning that gives away the traitor. Okay, here we go. The number 1 spot goes to Goro Akechi, the traitor. One of the things that makes this fight great is the build-up to the fight. The dialogue showcases that Akechi has gone a little bit insane and that he has daddy issues. It sent chills up my spine when he revealed that Shido was his father, and he was going to turn his back on him at some point. Akechi wants to kill your party because plot, and the fight begins. The first thing he does is show that he has unique persona by showing the 2 enemies next to him that they can turn psychotic, and then they turn psychotic, meaning that they are now more powerful than they would be normally. It's also revealed that they can turn others psychotic, hence the mental shutdowns and psychotic breakdowns. The 2 psychotic personas will start by casting Desperation, meaning their attack is increased, but their defense is reduced. And they do nothing whatsoever except normal physical attacks. Once you kill them, Akechi comes out to fight you himself. They showed his hatred of the main character in this stage, by making him attack Joker most of the time. Goro will use Bless and Curse attacks for most of the fight, and sometimes even Megaton Raid. But when he reduces his HP to half his health, he goes Super Saiyan and drops Megadola, I think that's how you pronounce it, on top of you. Once you beat him, another cutscene happens, where your party attempts to tell Akechi that violence is the only way. Goro then makes himself go psychotic, and shows his persona's true form. Then Phase 3 begins. He will cast Tetrakarn, which is an ability that enables the target to reflect 1 physical attack back at the attacker, and he can also use a magical form of this, Makarikarn. He also casts Brave Blade, an ability which seems to have a very high chance of critting, and is death on his stick on Merciless, I'm sure. He can also cast Dakaja and Desperation. His 5th ability is Negative Pile, which has a chance to inflict despair on the player. His next attack is Deathbound, which again does pretty decent damage 1 to 2 times. He will then gain Aegion, Miragion, Maega, and Megidolon, from what I have seen. He may have more attacks, he may not. Afterwards is when the feels kicks in, as he realizes that he is too late, because Shido's perception of Akechi appears and summons about 10 shadows. I would know, I counted. The 2 Akechis aim their guns at each other, but not before he sees the Phantom Thieves, by closing the engine room bulkhead doors. You can hear 2 gunshots and bodies falling to the ground, meaning that both Akechis are dead. Anyways guys, thanks for watching Top 11 Persona 5 boss battles. Please share this video with your friends and subscribe for even more content. Although regardless of whether or not you subscribe, I will keep making content, even if you hate me. Anyways, this has been Axemmela. Goodbye!